Hello and welcome to the collapse experiment where I tend to just talk and piss people off. This is only my third video on here and I'm already setting high standards. Well, as you can see, I am smoking some Briar Fox. Although I think the pipe just went out. Oops. So, there's a few stories that I follow. There's a few subjects that I research. There's one in particular that has been bugging me for a while now. And I'm sure you've heard this name before, and I know I'm going to get some backlash for it. There was a journalist, was a journalist. I doubt he will be a journalist when he gets out of prison, if he gets out of prison. So his name is James Gordon Meek. Why does this bug me? But Matt, he pled guilty. He admitted to it. Well, this is where I have to take my former liberal ideals and throw it back at you and say, well, how many black people, because they had really poor public defenders, pled guilty to shit that they didn't do? Or if they had just simply gone to trial, it would have either gotten thrown out or they would have gotten a less sentence. But to get back onto the subject, yes, he did plead guilty. And there's a few things that I find irritating about that. For one, the evidence that they had against him was not found on the computers that they took from his apartment. Okay, how do you know that? Well, because in court documents, when they were doing their discovery, his lawyers discovered that his computers, even 9 months after they were taken from his apartment, had yet to be searched. It's kind of weird, right? I mean, considering what he was charged with, you think you would gather all the evidence to present it to the court and say, hey, here's what we have. But they never did that. And I know that because I read some of the court filings. That's a little messed up, don't you think? The other thing is, when I talk about this subject online, I get a lot of backlash. A lot. And it's never... How do I put this? I've had two people in particular contact me who allegedly know this guy, right? One claiming they are the father of one of the victims. Again, I don't know who this person is. And another one saying that they went to high school with Meek, which, hey, I went to high school with a lot of people too. I wouldn't claim to know them today. And this person told some stories that can't be verified. It's not like I can look up what they said to be true or not. One story in particular that they told said, well, he admitted it to this high school teacher that they had. Which, hey, some people stay in touch with the high school teachers. I understand that. It's just very weird that that's the story. Like what? Do I contact Langley and say like, hey, did you have this guy as a student? Did he tell you that he... I suppose I could. I don't know how far I would get with that. There's one common factor in both of these stories that I was told. One being the father of one of the victims, allegedly, stated that Meek was put in his position. This is during the Obama administration, I believe. No, it was not. This would have been... Bush? I'm thinking this was Bush. because he left his position as the uh, advisor to Homeland Security on terrorism. Yeah, he left that job when the Boston bombing happened. So I think he was there for 2 years. And, anyways, Meek had top secret clearance. He had access to all these documents. But they were saying that he remained a producer in the news and he had this position and he worked for government because they knew what he was and they wanted to control what he could do. I'm not really buying that, but I'll get back to it because that could be the bigger story here, right? So they were saying that he was in a position as a producer. He could keep certain stories out of the news. He could feed some stories into the news that they wanted. I'll give you that. But if that's the case, why would he do 3212 unredacted, which makes the Pentagon look like a lying pile of crap? And then he was also involved in the pullout of Afghanistan, Operation Pineapple Express, which was a bunch of guys who were retired, working off the books, doing their own thing, trying to save lives while Biden fucked up the pullout. So if Meek was this operative, which is what he would have been, on the inside with the news agencies, would he have done these things knowing that he's going to piss some people off? Or was it to make him still look legit? So the other person that I had talked to, the one that mentioned the high school professor, was very adamant. He admitted to it. He did these things. It's horrible, blah, blah, blah. Also said, yes, he was targeted for the work that he was doing and his research on his research. I don't know about research because, I mean, he was involved in Pineapple Express and he was helping write the book all about it with another guy who was also involved in Pineapple Express. But they stated he was targeted for the work he was doing, but he did do the crime. Could it be both? Well, that's the question that's bugging me. I mean, is there the possibility that he was just left out there as a compromised asset to do certain things, and if he went beyond some kind of line, all of a sudden, yeah, we're gonna pull him out. He's going to jail. Well, here's another thing that bugs me. For one, they raid his apartment. And if he had actually done these horrible things that they later charge him with, 9 months later, charge him with, right? He's out and about. He's staying at his mom's house, which is where he ends up being found. He's out. That's the thing. That's the weirdest part, right? Like, he wasn't locked up. He was nowhere treated like a January 6er, right? Where he wasn't stuck in solitary waiting to hear what the findings were going to be. No, they took his computers and his phone. They admitted he had classified documents, which weren't allowed to be brought up as evidence because his lawyers were like, hey, he's being targeted as a journalist. And the response was, no, you can't use the documents in court. Oh, by the way, here's all the stuff we found. And even how they found it is sketchier than the rest of the story, right? So Dropbox, they've got a privacy policy. Like you can put stuff in there, they're not going to look at it. Okay. I mean, if you're going to use an online server, depending on what you're saving on there, it might seem like a good idea. Personally, anything online. And this is a guy that worked with top secret clearance for the government. Would he use Dropbox? Seriously, would he? So anyways, the FBI, they say that they were contacted by Dropbox because they went through his files and found some sketchy material. And sketchy is putting it mild, correct? Okay. So there's some sketchy material that's on there. So they contact the FBI and say, hey, we found this. And the FBI's response was as to why they looked at the Dropbox was notified there was sketchy material in there. So who notified Dropbox that there was some sketchy stuff in there? And how did they know? That's another good question. Personally, when I hear confidential source in any of these stories, I tend to think that the confidential source is probably the source that, I don't know, put the stuff in there. Or it's a way for the government to say, we're the confidential source, and we're not going to say that we're the, the source that did the thing that we don't want to admit to. I mean, I've actually seen this before in a few other cases I've looked into. It's never an anonymous tip. That's something entirely different, because you can only get so far with an anonymous tip. Like, you can't get a warrant, there's several things that you can't do. But a confidential source, that's an entirely different thing. So anyways, where am I at with this story? More questions than answers. That tends to be how these things go. I mean, he did go to prison. He's going to be there for a few years. But I guess what gives me more questions than answers is, why is there so much pushback? It's like, it's one thing to say, dude, you're wrong, blah, 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 here's why. There's a whole nother thing to, when you start asking the hard questions of these people, and they respond with, well, are you an apologist for people who engage in this activity, the one that he's accused of? And I'm like, no, I have questions, and quite frankly, it's a little disturbing, the fact that nobody is willing to talk about it at all, ever. Even the people who are just very, very adamant that he did this, it's horrible, and you should just believe me. That's the weird part. It's like, I don't know you. I have no reason to believe you are who you say you are, especially when you're hiding your identity. That was one of the cases. The other one, so the other one was a Twitter account that at first, when they started responding, and it was weird. It was a post that I had made several months back that they were responding to. Almost like they did a search or something to bring this up, right? Why would this show up in their feed? That's a good question. One, they don't follow me. Now they do. Now they follow me. Which, that would explain why it shows up now. But as for back then, why our paths would cross on Twitter, I have no idea. But it did. Now they follow me on there. I should probably honestly block them. But this person, I looked at their responses and their Twitter posts, and it's all over the place. For somebody who's supposed to be the housewife of somebody else, they know an awful lot about sports and other, shall I say, manly things. Who else do we know that fakes accounts and pretends to be uh is it gender or sex now? I can't keep up. So anyways, yeah, this other account, very questionable. I have no idea who they are. I don't even know if they're the same sex that they claim to be on this, but they claim to know personal things. They referred to James Gordon Meek as Jamie. I had never heard that before. I'd never heard anybody refer to him as Jamie. Whenever he does interviews, whenever he's on TV, it's his full name. Maybe it's a personal thing, maybe it's a professional thing, maybe it's neither. I don't know. Because the other weird thing is, after their last post or tweet or Xing, I can't keep up with that either. I'm just going to stick with Twitter for the remainder of this. When they sent the last tweet, they also wrote 3 others after that. I didn't get a chance to read them. And when I went back into my account, those follow-up tweets were gone. So I don't know if they were saying too much or were posting to the wrong thread. I have no idea. But that's also kind of sketchy. It's like, what exactly were you saying? To the point where you would just delete a tweet. Three tweets were deleted. That's also weird too. So anyways, I'm going to be doing an updated version of my book on James Gordon Meek. It left off where we had no idea where he was, what was happening, if he was locked up, if he was in custody, if he was dead. Like, we had no idea at that point in time. And now we've got the lack of a court case. Interesting. We've got some documentation on court filings. We've also got these weird comments from the internet going back and forth as to he did it, but we're not going to say how we know that he did it. And vague responses and claims that can't be backed up. Yeah. And yeah, my whole idea on doing stories like this is to look at the facts, okay? And there's a lot that we just don't know, but there are certain things that are documented and things that we do know. And yeah, that's really what it's going to come down to is he pled guilty. So you can believe that he's guilty or not, depending on that. You can also look at how the trial was definitely going to be one-sided. You can look at that. You can look at how his how he's been perceived online. And that's another weird thing. Why you would make memes and post about him being involved in things that he never discussed whatsoever on the internet, I don't know. Why would you have to damage this guy's credibility while he's rotting in a prison? That doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. And who's the one that orchestrated that whole thing? Yeah, let's make a fake news article saying this thing, post it so other people believe it online, and make him look worse than he already does. Somebody's trying really hard to do something here. So anyways, that's what I'm going to be working on in the near future, and that should be out sometime soon. And considering the sales of that first version of this book, I highly doubt anybody is really going to look at it or care. Honestly, I think the only time that this is really going to pop up again is if the dude ends up Epsteined or something, which would really suck. And then you're still going to have people split. It's going to be like, well, why'd they have to get rid of this guy if all this shit happened? And then the other group is going to be like, well, you know, those people are treated in prison and he kind of deserved it. But yeah, either way, it's definitely a sketchy situation on both sides. really sketchy. Nothing here really makes any damn sense. Keep on typing.